Hey listeners, last year was our 15th year of the best in food storytelling. As we head into 2025, we're kicking off a contest in collaboration with the podcast series Feast and Harmony and Sixth Man, where you have the opportunity to win a 4-night cruise for 2 on Chefs Making Waves, a food, wine, and spirits festival at sea. When you donate to HRN, you'll be entered for the chance to win a porthole cabin for 2 on Chefs Making Waves, sailing May 5th through 9th, 2025, from Miami to Cozumel, Mexico on Norwegian Gem. You'll also support another year of great food storytelling with a portion of your donation going toward disaster relief for the food and beverage communities within Western North Carolina and Southern California. This cruise is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for culinary adventurers, featuring top celebrity chefs including Jonathan Waxman, Antonio Lafaso, Robert Irvine, and many, many more. There's a myriad of experiences such as restaurant takeovers, live food and mixology demos, themed parties, and more. To enter your chance to win, please visit heritageradionetwork.org/cruise. Terms and conditions apply. You must be 21 or over to enter. That's heritageradionetwork.org/cruise.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
I wake up in the morning and I'm feeling a vibe. Give thanks to the Father, I'm breathing alive.
Culture and Flavor is a podcast about food and culture centered in Black and Indigenous foodways, hosted by myself, Zella Palmer, right here in New Orleans, Louisiana. Each episode features high vibrational conversations with cultural bearers, chefs, farmers, scholars, barbecue pit masters, and more. Where there is flavor, there is history. Join me on Culture and Flavor and all of my guests as we share stories that will have you praise dancing, cooking, conjuring, and inspiring your culinary journey. Welcome back to another season of Culture and Flavor with your host, Zella Palmer. I have to say, I am so touched by so many of you who tuned in last season and supported. When I started this podcast, I wanted to fill a void that I see in food media. I wanted a safe space for people that I have met over the years to have conversations, a place that isn't consumed by celebrity chef culture or is afraid to talk about America's food systems. I also wanted to make sure that I invite many of my friends and family, many from around the world, especially Africa and the Caribbean, to share their voices, wisdom, and knowledge. But also grounding this podcast to honor the legacy of Black chefs in America, especially those in New Orleans and those who are holding the torch. This land, Turtle Island, the land that made generations of me and my family, and many of you have come from, is going through a huge shift. 2025 is going to be a very interesting year, to say the least. So much has been happening in the world, and y'all, it's so important now more than ever that we break bread with each other and have necessary conversations about our food systems and culture that hopefully springs us to action. I am working hard to make sure that each invited guest to this podcast adds value to your life and opens your mind to a world you might not be familiar with. It's time. We are stronger together. I traveled a lot in 2024. And as my friend Zimbabwean chef and mischief maker Kudzai Binge Pinge always said, you are traversing continents. I believe that we have to learn from each other. And in this season of Culture and Flavor, join me for a journey from Turtle Island to the world. There's much to discuss, learn, process, and hopefully this season will encourage us to find joy and hope in this changing world. This season starts with a trip to Grenada, that lies in the heart of the Southern Caribbean, an enchanting, lush island filled with spices where my extended Uncle Guido, or Dr. Guido Marcelle, or known on the island as Doc or Guido, is a renowned botanist, chemist, and farmer. I spent the summer of 2024 filming and documenting him for my next film, Grenada to the World, Island of Spice. For me, I have always been fascinated with plant medicine. Growing up in the 80s and 90s before gentrification, Black neighborhoods always had a local elder from the South that knew how to cure anything and had a root plant from down home in their cabinet. And of course, before the sea moss craze during COVID, Caribbeans and Latinos in any major city in the U.S. brought their knowledge with them to help many of us survive Western medicine and the lack of access to quality health care. These were my memories as a child. So when Uncle Guido, to me, the Dr. Dolittle of plants as a little girl, moved into my parents' house on the south side of Chicago when he was studying at the University of Illinois in Chicago at UIC for his Ph.D. in the 80s, he left a lasting impression on me. I lost my father in 2021, and one of his dying wishes was for me to go to Grenada, an island I only heard about when I was a child. And Uncle Guido's stories, magical stories of this electrifying carnival called Spice Mas, and the music that they played that he called Jab Jab. So welcome to another season of Culture and Flavor with your host, Zella Palmer. And this episode is with Dr. Guido Marcelle. Come with me to Grenada, the Spice Island. Welcome, Dr. Marcelle.
Thank you, Zella. It's a pleasure to be here on a wonderful day like today, just after Grenada's Spice Mass. The air was filled with celebration, joy, excitement. Even though we had the passage of Beryl earlier in July, I think we, mentally and recovered nicely, except maybe for the islands of Carriacou and Petite Martinique, or neighboring islands, who are, doing their reconstruction and things like that. Well, Grenada to the world, the Spice Island, there's so much we have to offer sometimes that is not realized or not, people have not come across it. Even just in the similarities between us and Louisiana, which is a good place to start. Why I say that is because Louisiana has Mardi Gras and we have Spice Mass, okay, which is usually celebrated in August. Louisiana at one time was very French. Because that's how they developed their Mardi Gras in the, what it was about, it was about 1834, thereabout. Um, we have our spice mass. Very interestingly, Louisiana is the only state that is divided into parishes. And in Grenada, we are also divided into parishes, that kind of similarity. We also have a background of Creole, which we have lost. Speaking of it, we have lost somewhat because most of the patriots migrated to Trinidad and Tobago. So we don't speak Creole as such, but it is evidence in some of our language and also in our cooking and parts of our lifestyle. Some of the words we use are still very, 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 very Creole. Um, so there are lots of similarities, just to start, just between Grenada and Louisiana, even in our cooking styles to a certain extent, which would be demonstrated more in the documentary. We do a lot of serious seasoning when we cook. Our food must be tasty, you know. And for that, we depend on a lot of plants, naturally growing plants and herbs and things, so we make use of seasonings and we make use of spices. We are called a spice isle not by chance. Um, we are heavy producers of nutmeg, although this has declined dramatically since the passage of Hurricane Ivan in 2004. Your Katrina was in 2005, so in comparison. So we produce a number of spices. So to the world, we do nutmeg, we do cinnamon, which is the real cinnamon verum. We do clove, we do pimento or allspice, we do bay leaf. We also have ginger, cinnamon, ginger, turmeric, vanilla, and even some cardamom, along with the peppers. We lots of Grenadians like the use of hot pepper. So we have bird pepper, and then we have other like chili pepper and other peppers, and even seasoning pepper. Um, so in our cooking styles, we try as much as possible to embellish whatever we are doing with taste, with lots of taste and flavor. So we use the spices, we use the seasonings, like chive and thyme, tarragon, rosemary, the basils. We have a range of basils that we use. Well, along with, we'll top it off with some garlic and onion to give it, So that is generally one of the phenomena too in our cooking styles is that we tend to cook thoroughly. We heat for a long time. Yeah, so usually our food is thoroughly cooked. We are not a people who like things like rare. Okay, so like rare steak would be a sort of outcast phenomena. Yeah, we like our fish well done, so our seafoods well done, our meats well done, and even our vegetables well done. One of the words that seeps into a language, which maybe is not international, is the word provision. In Grenada, we speak of certain foods as provisions. These are usually some of the vegetables and the on the ground, the on the ground, let's say tubers and things that we cook. So provisions would be things like yam, sweet potato, cassava, dasheen, tanya. Um, I could give the scientific names of those, but people could always Google it and then you don't find them. And all those make a taro. They make a difference. And on top of that, we have the whole range of musa, the banana, the sweet banana. Then we have plantain, and then we have one we call blugger, which is much more starchy. So all these we combine and we speak of those as provisions, So they provide for us the nutrients that we need for our survival. And you'll find that it's very basic in lots of our dishes. Yeah, our dishes. Lots of local would like to have their provisions along maybe with some rice and our famous pigeon peas and things like that. Um, One thing with the provision too, it seems to go very well with fish and in particularly saltfish. Um, so one of the famous dishes we make is what we call saltfish sauce, which is a very balanced and nutritious diet in the sense that it combines the fish, the saltfish, or sometimes the not processed fish, but the fish that we may have dried, the fishermen may have dried, which we call cornfish at times. Yeah. So this, along with vegetables, your cucumber, your tomato, your onions, and things like that, carrots, makes a very important combination which accompanies provision. Um, we must say, if you have your provisions, your starchy foods, one of the things about a provision, which I'll highlight a little bit, is lots of people think that maybe they are just carbs, but we have to understand that they are also very rich in fibers, they are rich in minerals, and they give you that feeling of satiety, that feeling. In this regards, I cannot leave out the famous breadfruit, which has this dynamic history which came to the Caribbean since in about 1792, 1793, about by the Providence, being brought to St. Vincent and Jamaica. So breadfruit to do is one of the very important vegetable or fruit or provision in our diet, and we recognize it as now becoming one of the superfoods for its nutritional value among other things, its ease and availability, the productivity of the trees. They do not need any great sort of management, and they can produce a lot. And also the variety of products that could be produced from them. And this gives me the opportunity to mention that Breadfruit is sort of the essence of a national dish, which we call oil down.
The history of maroons, escaped enslaved Africans in the Americas and the West Indies, has a deep and profound meaning back then and today. Please explain a little bit further.
Yeah, it's funny how words can evolve. Um, so maroon in Grenada has become more like an action word. Okay. Um, so it's like a society event. You need help, you need assistance in doing something in your gardening or farming, or in constructing a house, or in doing some, labor work, but you cannot do it for yourself. Okay. So usually you invite some friends, some neighbors to come along to assist. And in that event, you will provide the food and the drinks, And usually one of the food or the drinks could be something like the oil down, yeah, or pigeon peas soup. This is a pigeon peas. Pigeon peas is kajan, which makes a very beautiful soup, pigeon peas soup, and there again, you incorporate your provisions in the soup. You do things like yam, sweet potato, cassava, you name it, and even throw in some dumplings.
Remember when you took me to traditional mass and I had crayfish waters? You also have waters.
We have waters here.
And it reminded me of a crawfish boil. I said, I feel like I'm eating crawfish back home.
Yes. Yeah, in our rivers we still have crayfish, and crayfish is collected or harvested, and we do something called crayfish water, which is like, and the interesting thing about the maroon and even oil down and things like crayfish water, they are not done like for one whole. There's a high social element about it. It's the share. It's always the share. So also you find the oil down would always maybe be cooked at a party, cooked at the beach, cooked at the riverside, cooked in the hills, and it's for a number of people. It's for a number of people. You don't cook oil down ever for one person. Similarly, with the crayfish water too, it's usually to share or for sale. On top of that, too, we also have managed water, yeah, which is considered to be one of sexy outputs. Managed water is usually made using the testicles of animals, like either bulls or goats, and although it is anecdotal, there seemed to be some scientific relevance to its name being called mannish water, because you find usually the testicles of animals are very rich in zinc and selenium, because those elements are stored there. So in the mannish water, you're getting a burst of these elements technically when you consume a bowl or a cup. This similarly overlaps with sea moss. You know, or you will hear in Grenada, lots of people talk about sea moss. It's a seaweed, it's an algae, it's a gracilaria that grows. Some of it's cultivated now or harvested in the wild. But lots of drinks are made from the sea moss. So you have sea moss drinks, which is very popular in Grenada and very popular among the men again. And again, it's anecdotal that it's supposed to be a booster for the men. But there is some scientific, evidence that supports the fact that because, sea moss is growing in the sea, it is also rich in trace elements, like zinc, selenium, copper, and other things like that. Apart from the fibers and mucilaginous content, it gives you that overall benefit to the diet. So you see it, and those are things too that are sort of social. It is they sort of overcome the individual.
I think, for me, and I mean, I'm sure for a lot of people who have visited Grenada, It's one of the most underrated Caribbean islands, I think. It is unbelievably beautiful. It's lush. It is just a magical place. And during the filming process, we were able to visit a few people who prepared oil down for us, the national dish of Grenada. I would love for you to talk about the history of oil down and the preparation of oil down, because it is now one of my favorite dishes. And I truly, truly enjoy, just the sense of community.
Feeding right back to the maroon, where you share labor and you share foods. And similarly, like when you do the oil down, which is a composite, of the basis is breadfruit, but you also put in other provision like sweet potato, yams. But you must have in your greens too. And for greens, we use the callaloo leaf. And in our case, for the callaloo, it's also or dasheen bush, which is colocasia. Colocasia is, one of the colocasia species, Colocasia esculenta. We also use some other, like the amaranth leaves and things like that. But also importantly, so you have your breadfruit, your greens, your colored, you might put in some carrots and things like that. You also use maybe turmeric for coloring and in the food, and the benefits, the multiple benefits of turmeric medicinally, among other things. And additionally, you must have coconut cream. You must have coconut cream to top it off, you know. And then you could sometime, along with the provision, you might throw in some dumplings made from flour. And what is ironic is that usually in the oil down, the dumpling are usually made by the men, and they tend to make a very, very tough dumpling. you you could actually on eating it, you enjoy the kicks in the bite. When you bite it, it responds to your teeth, and all that adds to the enjoyment and the environment. For meats in the oil dung, you could use a variety of things. You could use fish, you could use saltfish. For the other people who like, you could use any other meats, and there are some people who like the salted meat and things like that. So it's a variety, and it depends on the personality. Or if you want, you could do just a veggie oil down, you know. But the interesting thing is the dynamism of the color, the composition, because you have the green, the yellows of the turmeric, you have the yellows of the breadfruit.
It's literally the color of the
Of
Grenadian
the
flag.
flag. That's the other thing too. So it's like it's comprehensively the kind of it carries the ethos of the nation. Yeah, so the ethos of the nation is reflected in oil. And ironically, I think it is also eaten in that way. There's that kind of pride and love, for eating olive. So that's one of the things we would like to translate to the world. The way you enjoy a meal, or the way you enjoy something like a national dish. And it is something we always want to share with all tourists or all visitors. You don't leave Grenada without it. So you get a taste of spices and seasonings, among other things. One of the famous drinks too, which kind of goes along with the oil down, is Tanya Log.
Yes,
Tanya Log is
amazing.
peculiarly Grenadian. It's a punch made from Tanya. And Tanya is the genus is a Xanthosoma. It's an underground tuber or provision here, uh, which you cook and blend, and then you add milk and spices to it, and it is out of this world. I also think it is peculiarly Grenadian. You wouldn't find Tanya log anywhere else in the world. I mean, that's it might be an idle boast, but I think it is something. So to the listeners out there, as much as possible, if you get the opportunity to travel to Grenada, make sure that these or some of these are on your eating list.
Yes.
You must enjoy. You must have them. Yeah, and it's interesting. All this ties into the I guess the nature of the people, the kind of fellowship, the way we express ourselves, the kind of love for our neighbors. And we're a small island, okay? Our population is just about 110,000. There are more people outside Grenada than in Grenada, actually. So I think we populate the diaspora. You could find Grenadians almost everywhere in the world. And we do have our peculiarities. You'll find that maybe Grenadians could identify Grenadians maybe wherever they are in the world by certain peculiarities in our language. There are certain words that are peculiarly Grenadian. For example, the hood of a car, we would refer to it as a bonnet. And that's peculiarly a Grenadian word. Yes. Um, Even the gas station, we would refer to it as a Bowser. So you're going to the Bowser. So there are some words that has steeped into your language that are fundamentally sort of Grenadian. And although we don't speak Creole offhand, there are some words from the Creole that has filtered into our language. And again, there is this blend of our foods and our culture, and our culture is dynamically represented like in the Spice Mass period. And then one of the famous um, outpourings from Grenada, which is very peculiar to, is the jab jab. Is the jab jab.
The music is electrifying. I
Yes,
have to say that.
there's a jab jab beat, like there's a jab jab performance, there's a jab jab movements, and culturally and historically, the jab jab is a kind of resilience and rebellion against the planter class who didn't want the ordinary people to kind of play mass and have fun. So that I think when 1838, when emancipation came, the slaves decided, the past slaves decided to let us revel and let us be more black than black, and let us be devils. Let us be there, and so we'll have chains and horns and things like that. And we'll make our own music, we'll make our own songs, and we'll make our own steps and things like that. So that is the nexus and the history of the jab jab, which pervades today too, and is very peculiar in Grenada Spice Mass, particularly in Juve, among other things. Our traditional masks are also very exciting in that we cover some areas like we have different traditional masks like the Indians, Viku, which represents kind of dead body. It's his body getting up from the grave and celebrating.
It's the same that you see in New Orleans too. Start skull and bones. And we also have very traditional practices early in the morning on Mardi Gras morning. So it's so many similarities. And
Yes.
a friend of mine from Brazil, even she said, "Oh my God, this is like Brazilian carnivals that we have here, traditional Brazilian carnivals." And she saw the links. So I think it's particular to Grenada, but I mean, you can see the similarities all around the world where there were Black folks.
Yes, and it goes back into Africa too, because if you look at mass in places like even Cape Verde, even Angola, and places like that, you will see some similar portrayals. Similar portrayals, and that's one of the things I think about the Spice Mass and the Carnival and the Mardi Gras. It cultivates a kind of dynamism that reaches deep into our history, deep into our culture, and sends a message, you know, that we hope would not be lost on the younger generation. They must understand it. They must understand maybe where it came from, why it is celebrated the way it's done, maybe why we have the songs, and why we express our movements in those particular rhythm and things like that. All these are intrinsic to the full cultural expression, of our heritage, where we came from and I would say where we are and hopefully where we are going.
In my humble opinion, Grenada has one of the best juves or carnivals in the world. And, even just being there and watching people from all over the world come and participate in Jab Jab. And you've been talking about it since I was a little girl, and you've been, an advocate for Jab Jab, And even when we were out there, when we were in Guava and we were filming, and we were going through watching the traditional jab jab bands and traditional mass. You had a moment where you got exhausted from the heat, and it was a hilarious moment, y'all. Not hilarious because I was scared, because I was like, oh my god, he's exhausted from the heat. But once he came to, he put up his fist and said, jab jab live.
Yeah, yes. It has that vibrancy. And I hope it's a beat maybe that could even spread far and wide, because um, it's melodious, but also it pulls out of you a kind of rhythm and a kind of movement that you never maybe have realized has been endemic in you. Yeah, once you get into the bands or even on the sidewalks, you get that kind of feeling, that kind of feeling. I think it resonates deep in your heart and even in your brain, and it's like a emotive reconnection with spirituality and culture, and it has that kind of totality in it. So sometimes we take it for granted, we take it lightly, but um, it's like a powerful message. It's like where you come from, where you are, where you are going. I can celebrate. I can demonstrate my resilience. I can demonstrate my revolutionary nature, because that's one of the things. Yes, and all in a peaceful way. All in a peaceful way. It's very significant, and I think maybe. Well, I'm not an anthropologist as such, but I think if they begin to look at it in more serious terms, they would begin to see those affiliations or those connections.
We're going to put a pause on that and take a quick little break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about your journey in plant medicine.
This episode is brought to you by Wisconsin Cheese. Wisconsin, the state of cheese, makes half of the nation's specialty cheese and wins more awards than any other state or country. Our heritage and traditions, master cheesemaker program, and the American propensity for innovation all put Wisconsin on the cutting edge of cheesemaking. With over 600 varieties of cheese to choose from and 5,500 national and international awards and counting, get ready to turn your refrigerator into a trophy case. Enjoying a Wisconsin cheese is basically like winning a gold medal in culinary achievement. Set your mind at cheese. When you bite into a wedge of Wisconsin Wonderful, you know it is made with the ultimate skill and passion possible. Find your next favorite cheese at wisconsincheese.com.
Please let us go back to the beginning. Tell us about your journey in pharmacognosy.
It's a very interesting journey, and I think it hails back to my grandmother. My grandmother, who was originally from Carriacou, was a midwife, a very serious midwife. She delivered children almost all over the island of Grenada for free. She would leave home, at nights, if called, and go to where maybe a mother, is in labor, and help her to deliver the child. And then she would spend 3 days with that mother. And on the third day, she would give her a bath, a bush bath, a bush bath, to sort of bring her back into reality. It's a cleansing bath and a spiritual bath, and the bath that show that you have given birth to a new life and things like that. So it was in my youth. It was like hearing some of our poems, talking about plants and things like that, got me kind of excited. And then my father was a farmer too, so we grew almost everything. So we grew up. So I grew up with fruits around me, vegetables around me. Even going to school, you learned our snacks were not the things in paper bags and plastic bags. Our snacks were climbing the trees and harvesting genuine fruits. So you become familiar with that kind of environment. You become familiar like with growing sugar cane and sucking sugar cane and harvesting sugar cane, growing peanuts and harvesting peanuts and things like that. Um, so as I grew a little older, there was in me this kind of search for scientific things at a very early age, because I could remember very early, even being under 10, going to school, when people made the expression, things are far, I was always confused by what do you mean by far? How far is far? That's one of the questions I used to ask. How far is far? In my mind, I can because do you mean as far as a cloud, as far as a thing, as far as a thing? So that was one of the things that challenged me. In my youth, too, one of the things that challenged me and maybe helped with my scientific thinking in later years is I was always asking the question: could there be nothing? And if there is nothing, how could nothing be? Because can we ever describe nothing? So that is a challenge I always had. So I must say, even in my youth, dangling with those thoughts made me become so more kind of inquisitive. So I always was interested in the plants around me, you know, the shapes of plants, the heights of plants, the colors of leaves, the colors of flowers, why are they doing what they are doing? And then I'm learning that my grandmother used some of these things for medicinal purposes. Even made me more excited, and so the next, as I embarked on my education, becoming very interested in things like biology and chemistry. Even before I start doing research, you start mentally kind of pulling things apart. Why is this spicy? What makes this smell? What gives this color? What makes this grow? So those are questions, I keep asking myself. And in the end, I sort of said, well, maybe I would have to find answers for these, answer for these. And that's how I got more and more involved, like in studying, doing the plant work. So in secondary, so in primary school, I would have just been maybe dangling with the things around me, having fun with fruits and plants and things like that. But as I went to secondary school, I started zeroing in on the sciences. I did some biology, chemistry, physics, and things like that. And you're beginning to, challenge your teachers and thing and get deeper answers as to the things around you and the significance and the meaning, and seeing things transform. Because, like in Grenada, the seasons, there is the dry season and the rainy season, and I've know, about the hurricane period and things like that. And then again, like one of the things that fascinated me was the plants that kind of herald the season. There are certain plants that tell you that the dry season is coming in, and things like that. So good. Like one of those is the gumbo limbo or the lowland gomie, bussera, which we know when you see the leaves turn yellow, you know that the dry season is coming in. On the other hand, there's a pui. Uh, when you see the yellow pui start flowering in the hills, the rainy season is beginning. So, those sort of things started to fascinate me. And also, you know, why would some plants be medicinal? Why would some plants be poisonous? Why would some plants be irritants? Like we know, growing up, even since you're small, there are certain things that you avoid. Yeah, there are certain things like we call devil nettle. the devil nettle and zooty, and of course one of the famous one, which you were told to avoid, all the manganiel, which goes on the beaches, highly toxic. And so in a sense you begin to wonder, what is in these things and why, and then how are they related to us and even to other living animals and things. One of my educating factor in my younger days too, I always had animals. And my story is kind of sensational. I think no young people these days might accept this, as a gift. But from my aunt, her gift to me was one hen. Hen. Chicken, yes. And from that hen made eggs. From that eggs, I grew chicks. And from chicken, maybe I started selling eggs and having eggs. And I accumulated enough to buy a sheep. So and I went to a sheep. And from a sheep, so even in that time, going to school, having sheep and things, I'm also studying the things that the sheep eat and then things like that, becoming familiar with it. Because one of the things you realize that as the rainy season begin, as the sheep eat those fresh grass, they usually get diarrhea. So you begin to be observant with that thing. So I multiplied sheep, and sheep went to add sheep, and then sheep and goat. And then from sheep and goat, I went to having pigs. All these are, yeah. And the irony is, I guess people don't understand as I give this story, I had to take care of these things before I go to school. It was just getting up and go to school. You get up in the morning. But on top of that, even before I dealt with my animals, I had to do my athletic training. So I'd have to run for about 3 miles or so, run to the park, train, come back, take care of animals, and then you go to school. Yeah, then you go to school, and things like that. So it looked very simple. But again, school was fun. And all these things were an admixture.
And you went to university in Trinidad, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What did you go for in Trinidad?
And so after um, in secondary school, yes, I taught for a while and then get a scholarship to the University of the West Indies. Um, so I started off in Cayville, Barbados, and then I transferred to Trinidad, where I studied botany, chemistry, and zoology. So those are but I majored in botany and chemistry, being fascinated a lot by the plants around me. But in the meantime, too, I was also involved in a lot of sports. I was a serious sportsman, a serious cricketer, and a serious athlete at the time, a long jumper and, serious cricketer. So that when I graduated in botany and chemistry, I actually won a so Frank Worrell Memorial Scholarship, which is a cricket scholarship to do my master's in chemistry. So that's yeah. Um, and My master's work involved looking at the chemistry of some of Trinidad hardwoods. What was in them. It's like what makes mahogany bitter, what makes cedar, and then things like that. What was the chemistry in this wood? What in lemon seeds and citrus seeds, grapefruit seeds. What made the seeds bitter? What were the substances in them that bitter? What is ironic, though? Some of the substances that I worked on then are now commercialized. Are now commercialized. Then we were looking at it just for the chemistry, what is it, what they are. But now, like the limonene, we have this, some of the oils are now commercialized and things like that. You speak of beta cytosterol and things like that. These are things that, I'd worked on and things like that. But in those stages, we never realized their pharmaceutical value and things like that. It's only when I went to Chicago
Yes, how did you end up in Chicago? You have to tell that story.
Yes. And I went to Chicago to do my PhD. Yes. Well, actually, what happened, it's funny how international the world is. Okay. While doing my master's in Trinidad, I started teaching pharmacognosy to the pharmacy students in Trinidad, the pharmacy program. Then there was this scientist from Sri Lanka, Dr. Wajasekera, Professor Wajasekera, who was doing some work in Guyana, who came to Trinidad. And we started talking, and I expressed my interest in pharmacognosy. And he said, well, you should get in contact with Chicago, Professor Farnsworth, because their school is one of the best schools in the world and that. So I did do that. I wrote them, and they sent me their course, so I started using their course to teach. And then I decided maybe it might be good to join that department to do my PhD.
It was at University of Illinois at Chicago.
University
right?
of Illinois, yeah, downtown, the medical center, at the medical center, yes. So it's funny again how things fall into place. Um, there was a conference in Trinidad, and one of the senior professors there was Professor Schultes from Harvard, and he was a serious pharmacognosist. He's one of the professors who's had spent time, years, with the Indian community in South America, and studying their practices and their plants and things like that. So I can remember him approaching me and saying that when I did my presentation, congratulations, Dr. Marcelle. And I said, no, I'm not doctor. He said, it doesn't matter. Very good presentation. And then he said, I said that I'd applied to different universities in the States. And he said, but there's a professor here from the University of Illinois. You should talk to him. And that is how I actually ended up in the University of Illinois pursuing pharmacognosy. But what is more wonderful is the people I met in Chicago, the family I met through Jan Carew, the writer from Guyana, who is the author of Black Midas, which was actually studied in literature in school. It's in the Caribbean, Black Midas. He made contact with a family for me in Chicago, and that was the Palmer family. And sitting next to me is Zella Palmer, yeah, who at the time when I was in Chicago was in kindergarten, yeah, but now is professor and head of the Ray Charles, program for Afro-American Studies, at Dillard University. Yeah, so it is my pleasure after all these years, to have evolved. Yes, yeah. So it was in Chicago, my interest in more deeper plant work was developed, and even the colleagues around me, So as I speak this too, maybe I send greetings to all my colleagues from way over the world. There were colleagues from Japan, from Taiwan, from Thailand, Mexico. Each of them maybe now a professor in their own right, or working with different companies and things like that. I remember Robin from Canada. People you just cannot forget, and of course the professors who were in my life. Like Professor Farnsworth, Norman Farnsworth, who is legendary. Dr. Cordell, and among others, who sort of transformed my life and gave me that kind of, the deep understanding into the chemistry and pharmacognosy, the biochemical functions and the biogenesis and things like that of plants. So this become kind of ingrained in me. And so it developed in me the deeper appreciation of the things we have around us and the contributions they can make and how they can relate to us. And then this leads you to a better understanding of the environment and then the importance of things like climate change and, and even the delving back into your culture and things like that, how relevant, some of the plants are as regards, spices, food, seasoning, the medicinal import. You begin to develop a holistic approach and understanding, uh, not in an anecdotal way, but in a kind of substantive way, because you could now back it with science or back it with research, you know, to answer questions or to give people more relevant answers. There are lots of people who talk about plants and things like that, and maybe they have a sort of, what must I say, an incidental relationship. They don't go into it in a deep way. So some of the answers could be shallow, and could be challenged because they don't understand, and they don't have the deep understanding, of the significance, the importance, even the totality of the what must you say, the millions of activities actually taking place in plants. The transformation of chemicals, the work of enzymes, the role of the roots, the role of the leaves, the processes like photosynthesis and things like that, and biogenesis and things like that. So it evolves it develops a deeper and richer understanding for plants, which then you could pass on
And you passed it on by returning back to
to
Grenada
Grenada.
after living in the cold in Chicago for many years. And you came back and you've helped with so many products that are on the market and are sold nationally. One in particular, the Campeche, which sold out during Carnival, and it has lots of roots in it, and it's a kind of version, would you say, of under the counter a
Yes.
little bit?
Well, what I like to say is, in Grenada, there still is this phenomenon. If you go to certain shops, you have what you call these drinks that are prepared and kept under the counter. They
And you
use
see that in the Caribbean,
in the Caribbean a lot,
Dominican Republic, it's called
even in Jamaica
Mamajuana,
and even
Jamaica.
Jamaica, yes, under the counter. These drinks that are extracted with alcohol and they kept, so the shop goers would go in and ask, a touch of under the counter, anything like that. So what I must say is that with a little science, I have sort of evolved some under the counter to over the counter, yeah, and came up with the product Campeche. For the Grenada is still really limited. It is using one of our famous plants, Boabande, and the species of Boabande we have in Grenada is Chione venosa. Some scientific and chemical work has been done about it in, I think, in Austria, in Vienna, the university. They did the study of the chemistry, but they never spoke about the pharmacology or studies done. However, I was privy to get information from local doctors as to the effect that maybe overdosing with Babandi had. So I actually have verbal, oral evidence that it has effect. Again. So it is used popularly locally, particularly by the men. It is even exported under the counter still. There are people who send it to different countries and things like that. So that's one of the areas that I've done some work in. I've also done a fair amount of work in vanilla because I had my own farm, Dr. G's Garden, Grenada. And among other things, a lot of the rare fruits. I also do almost all the spices. In Grenada, I have cardamom growing, I have black pepper, and I also have vanilla. And from vanilla, I've developed some various products. There's a vanilla extract, and then I've done like a vanilla sugar, and vanilla paste. And yeah. So, and I've also helped, worked with lots of locals in different um, products. Ranging from snacks, tamarind ball, juices, alcoholic extracts, medicinal extracts. I've worked along with lots of local in different areas.
And you're an author too.
Yes, if we may say that, I have co-authored one of the most serious plant books on Grenada, Caribbean Spice Island plants. There are three of us authors there. It's a comprehensive book with lots of photograph on especially the forest plants of Grenada. And that's one we didn't do much about the herbs and things. But then I did one for the Bureau of Standards called Selected Herbs with Potential for Export. Here I selected some of what I think are some of the major medicinal plants of Grenada and delved into their botany, their chemistry, and their potential for developing it into market products. I've done that. Additionally, I did a booklet on nutmeg, covering extensively the biology, the botany, the chemistry, even some of the export characteristics and things like that of nutmeg. Then I did a little one on let's save energy. Some of the climate smart things we could do, but because I'm particularly interested in climate smart type agriculture. And then recently I did one for the children, a coloring book for the children, introducing them into flowers and plants and seeds and leaves and things like that.
One of the things that I would love for you to just talk about what our listeners or people who support this film that we're about to launch, Grenada to the World, Island of Spice. I think about just how the influences of plant medicine from Caribbean immigrants in the United States and African American communities. When I think about Harlem, when I think about Chicago, so many places, Caribbeans helped keep us healthy. You all brought so much knowledge and wisdom that we lost during the Great Migration, during slavery, and you all continue to be advocates in the States of healthy living and healthy eating. And I'm so excited for this documentary to come out to just seize Grenada through your eyes. What are some of the things that that our listeners can look forward to when we release it?
Okay. Well, one of the things, if I go back to Campeche a little bit, because it is impregnated with lots of spices too, I have heard from people out there that taken in small amounts, like with water, it could help prevent the cold and the flu. So that's it's almost a medicinal drink there now too. So that's one of the things too. And we know that like one of the things coming out of the documentary, apart from the spices, I would like to highlight the chocolates from Grenada. You know, one of the famous things saying we have is that we make cocoa tea. It's not the conventional like from tea leaves and things like that. You use the manufacture or sometimes the homemade cocoa balls or cocoa stick, and you boil that, and then you may add add additional spices to it. You add spice like cinnamon, bay leaf, pimento, and things like that. One of the things I want to clarify too is that the bay leaf that comes from Grenada is West Indian bay leaf, not to be confused with laurel. So if you want the real bay leaf to put into your oatmeal, your porridge, or to make a tea from bay leaves, make sure you're getting West Indian bay leaf, which is Pimenta racemosa, distinct from laurel. The bay leaf from Europe is really a laurel. Laurel noble is a laurel. And they're quite distinct in shape and quite distinct in flavor. So that's one of the things I would carefully like to point out too. Again, like coming from the Caribbean, the ginger, could be very important in one's health, for your ginger tea, um, especially like in the winter. One that is underrated and is our West Indian sorrel. It is called Jamaican sorrel. Yeah.
And we had some sorrel in
We
the
had some sorrel,
documentary.
yeah, the sorrel in the documentary. And the sorrel could be drunk cool or hot. And it has very good uterine tract cleansing ability. It is a good diuretic. It causes flushing of the kidneys and things like that. And it's a very pleasant tasting drink. And like in the winter, it could be combined with cinnamon. And that again, the true cinnamon. From Grenada comes cinnamomum verum, the true cinnamon. I think the people out there must now become au fait with the different types of there. There are really two. So there's two types of cinnamon. There's the cassia, and then there's the true cinnamon. Okay, I think people should try and gravitate towards the true cinnamon, and the true cinnamon usually comes from Sri Lanka and Grenada. It is just getting knowledgeable about these things. So knowledgeable about cinnamon, knowledgeable about the West Indian bay leaf. Then we also have allspice, but really then we have the type of gingers that come from our part. Um, Other famous medicinal plants that some things like Santa Maria, which is one of the things that is Lepia alba, um, which is very useful for colds and things like that. Well, of course, the lemongrass is international, for fevers. Yeah.
And you showed us in the documentary, we filmed some of the, made visits, and we went to the gardens. Yeah. And so visually, you all our listeners are going to be able to see, some of these plants in real time. But the Malby, and it's so much. He has so much knowledge, and even when we posted it on social media, I mean, people all over from Grenada and other places just say, "Oh my God, Dr. Marcelle has so much knowledge. I can't wait to see it." But one of the stories, we're in the editing process right now. We finished filming. But one of the stories that really touched me was about the ice cream lady that serves on Sunday. And I would love for you to end this episode to tell us about the ice cream lady.
Yes, yeah. Very interestingly, this lady, Miss Francis from Tilleries, who has been in ice cream since 1979. And she has made it her calling to sell can-made ice cream every Sunday. And from that, she was able to educate all her children. That is the nexus of the story. I think early in her life, she realized that I think she started as an estate worker, and she realized that maybe working on the estate may not be able to provide her with the means to educate your children. So, and you'll hear a story in the documentary, but she was able to get into the ice cream business by getting an ice cream can. And from since then, she has been in the business up to this day. She has produced a medical doctor, a surveyor, a principal of a secondary school, yeah, just from selling ice cream. And I think it's a wonderful story of perseverance, dedication, and showing that even to the world, that you can do it. You can do it. You don't give up. That there are ways and means of advancing. There are ways of means of becoming maybe economically based, economically sound. You were able to maybe send your children to school, then able to build a house, and then maybe continue with your products and even continue doing a little farming and thing in the area to provide with. That's one of the things we see a lot in Grenada too. The tendency is we don't like apartment dwelling a lot. We like single houses with a little piece of land around in which you can do your essential gardening. So you could have your seasonings, you could have your herbs. So so you just feel something like a cold or flu coming on, you dash out your back door and pick some leaves and hurriedly make a tea and then things like that. That is a kind of living that we we are kind of accustomed to. And like one of the plants too that is becoming very popular too is soursop. The soursop leaves, which is a good calmer, and it helps people to sleep and things like that. And research is showing that it helps with some sort types of cancer. But the fruit itself makes a beautiful ice cream, a beautiful drink, and then things like that. And I think this program would not be completed if I don't mention mangoes. Mangoes, I mean, to the world, yes, we support that beautiful fruit, the mangoes, from which you can get your minerals, your amino acids, your carotenoids, your sugars, you name it, your fibers, the benefits, and also the products that could be made, the cocktails from mangoes and things like that, combining it with alcohol and other things like that. So I think coming from the documentary would be this wealth of knowledge that we want to share, Grenada to the world, and also that you could further investigate, and you could take the opportunity to come and enjoy for yourself. I would also like to extend, greetings to maybe all my friends worldwide, the people who I studied with, and things like that, the people who are all in their different fields now. Yeah, I guess we have all grown and made a different contribution.
Everybody used to say when I met some of your colleagues, they said that when you were at UIC in Chicago, you would spend the night in the lab and just pull up a cot. And they said all the girls wanted you because you were also an athlete. And they said, but you were the smartest in your class, and they just really, appreciate and admire you. And everyone has good things to say about you. So I'm so excited for this film to come out.
Yes, yes, and I'm too excited, to share some of the things about me and about Grenada to the world.
Grenada to the world, y'all. Thank you all for joining Culture and Flavor. Thank you, Dr. Marcelle. This has been a beautiful interview, and we will keep you posted when Grenada to the World is released to the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wake up in the morning and I'm feeling a vibe. Give thanks to the Father, I'm breathing alive.
Culture and Flavor is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org.